We all know that Alec Baldwin pulled the trigger that fired the bullet that struck and killed cinematographer Halyna Hutchins back in October of 2021 on that Rust movie set. But who's really to blame for this fatal shooting? Hey, welcome to Profiling Evil, and thanks for coming on board today. Please hit that like and subscribe button and make sure you're sharing us with your friends. Now, prosecutors are pulling no punches in the involuntary manslaughter and evidence tampering case against Rust armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. They called her work unprofessional and sloppy. Hannah was the armorer for that Western movie Rust. The bullet that killed Hutchins also wounded director Joel Souza after passing through Hutchins' body. Now, Alec Baldwin was the person holding the gun that fired the bullet that killed Hutchins and wounded Souza. But he says he never pulled the trigger, and there's going to be a lot of discussion about that. You see, the angle he's going with is that the weapon misfired, and he certainly says he didn't know that it was loaded with live ammunition. Well, I appeared on Law and Crime Network last week to talk about the prosecution's opening statement in the case against Guiterrez-Reed. And they wanted to know where I saw the division of blame between Hannah Gutierrez-Reed and Alec Baldwin. So let's just start right off with that discussion.
All right, there you have it. You've been listening to the opening statements in the Rust movie set shooting trial there. And joining me today to discuss is trial attorney Jeffrey B. Simon and retired police commander and host of Profiling Evil, Mike King. Thank you both, gentlemen, for joining me. And Mike, how much of the blame here do you think is on Hannah Gutierrez, and how much is on Alec Baldwin, who also faces his own charges?
I think the armorer's responsibility is to make sure that the proper ammunition is going in for the proper scenario. The fact that this weapon was used for target practice earlier and now being used as a prop within the movie is really concerning to me, but it doesn't take away from the responsibility of the gun handler to know what's in that weapon. They can claim all day long that somebody else may have put those rounds that were live inside the weapon. But I'll tell you what, I spent a lot of time on a police range, and it boils down to the final person responsible is the one pulling that trigger. Now, if all the information that's been released is accurate, the weapon and the ammunition were not controlled like they should have been. There was one crime scene analyst that testified. Her name was Marissa Popple. She was from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office and said that she didn't see identical rounds anywhere on the set when she was doing her crime scene investigation, suggesting that there was a mix of live ammunition, blanks, and dummy rounds on set. But on the first day of trial, the defense was able to prove that the dummy rounds weren't rattling like they should, an indicator that suggests they're dummy rounds. Now, I think their angle there was to get on record that some of the security measures, like seeing if the round was the dummy by shaking it, failed, and failed miserably is an understatement. After the crime scene analyst took the stand, Sergeant Chris Zook from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office took the stand, and he testified that while he was there on site, he noticed another weapon that was loaded with the wrong kind of ammunition. He was looking and talking about a rifle that was a .44-40, but he noticed that there was a bullet jammed inside that weapon. It actually was a .45 caliber bullet. It makes sense, but the .45 is slightly larger than the .44, and it caused that weapon to jam. But it's also a glaring example of the disorganization and sloppy work that was going on that movie set. I was asked what my thoughts were on the prosecution's statements that Hannah apparently and recklessly contributed to Hutchins' death. Now, given the few things that we've already chatted about and taking into consideration Reed's duties as an armorer on the set, I responded in this way.
All right, so if you're just joining us, this highly anticipated case just started and is expected to wrap up around March. And we're learning more details of that tragic day. And joining me to discuss it all, our trial attorney, Jeffrey B. Simon, and retired police commander and host of Profiling Evil, Mike King. Mike, one of the things that Jason Lewis said that stuck out to me was the decisions Hannah Gutierrez-Reed made that day ultimately contributed to Miss Hutchins' death. Very strong sentence there. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think he's doing a really good job of showing that there was carelessness on the set. We've already learned, and I think this will be backed up by testimony, that they were in a little bit of a disarray because of people quitting and trying to consolidate and keep on schedule. But this idea that there were live rounds mixed with not only the dummy rounds, but those firing caps, or I mean the rounds that were practice ammunition that could fire a blank, is really concerning to me. But the thing that's most concerning is the fact that as you look at that stack of bullets in the box and you see the difference in the primer or that firing cap inside there that's silver that he's bringing out, it's clearly different than the others. They went even further and said, hey, a dummy round is going to have a hole drilled into the side of it. So there was clearly an absolute disregard for going and doing those safety checks. Not only the first check before she hands it off, but that second check where two sets of eyes are looking at the weapon. And I think that's going to really weigh heavily in this particular case as we think about it. And then I'm troubled by the number of rounds in that box that actually have indentations like the firing pin has struck them. I'd like to know if there were some misfires in there, because that could actually help the defense in claiming that there were some problems with the weapon and the functionality of the weapon. But I don't think it changes the fact that somebody should have been really carefully examining what kind of rounds, and having live rounds in a setting like this where it's practice rounds and blanks just seems completely out of touch.
This is a perfect place to point out that I looked into the job description of an armorer, and I got that job description from the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. And I discovered this information, quote, armorers are responsible for the transport, storage, and safe use of all weaponry and firearms on film sets. Armorers are highly skilled individuals with a great deal of responsibility for the safety of the cast and crew. They ensure that the weapons are safely and correctly handled, and those who handle them, which is usually the actors, are competent to do so. The armorer on a film or TV set is present all the time to ensure the safety of the cast and crew when the weapons are used. The armorer also ensures the production is able to get the best possible use of blank firing weapons. And this wasn't just a blank firing weapon. Now, the armorer should know what the director wants to achieve and help them carry it out in a safe manner. So continuing by quoting, the actor or actress who will be firing the weapon should be instructed on the dangers of particular weapons, and they're taught a safe way to use them. They should be instructed as to where to aim and how many blank rounds they have. The armorer should be aware and makes the cast and crew aware of where the spent shells could eject. They don't want like someone shooting a semi-automatic and having a round hit somebody else. The armorer should also collect all firearms and safely secure them after each discharge. The locations department on a film set should be in direct contact with police service bureaus and make sure the armorer has an opportunity to show the officer the plugged weapons and receive permission to operate those weapons. That'll be something else that'll be interesting to see if it happened. Now get this, there is no particular educational background required for this job, except they're supposed to follow directions and be reliable. Holy cow. I'd like to know your thoughts about the description and the charge of involuntary manslaughter in this case, because that makes things a little different in my book. I hope you'll put your comments down below. And before we cover some of the remaining big moments in the trial thus far, I want to just pause long enough to talk about choir practice. Choir practice is our monthly live It's the only live I really do anymore, and it's held on the first Monday of every month. We do it at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, and all we do is chat about big things that are happening in the news. This month, I've got a longtime buddy, retired New York Police Department Homicide Commander Tommy Joyce, joining me. And we are thrilled to announce that Dr. and Chief Retired Kenny Kinsey from the Alec Murdaugh case is also going to be with us. And you're not going to want to miss our discussion, including this drop-in by Ms. Ashley Solomon. She's the granddaughter of a missing man with a story that you're going to be glad you hear. So make sure you check out Choir Practice.
Hey everybody, look who I'm hanging out with. And listen, I'm not attending choir practice, but I just wanted to tell you that you need to be watching Profiling Evil YouTube. Don't miss it. I'm telling you, there's something there for you every single time. I never miss, you shouldn't either.
Now, let's get back to the trial of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed on the Rust movie set. I think another powerful piece of evidence came from the first couple of days of this trial when a forensic examiner named Jason Hawks got on the stand. Now, his company extracts data from cell phones, and he discovered that the night before the incident, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was on the phone chatting with someone about smoking weed in a jacuzzi the night before the incident. I mean, how important do you think a piece of information like that's going to be for a jury? After this guy was Catherine Rowe Walters. She is actually a Rust crew member who testified that after the shooting, Hannah took some items from the prop truck, but she did so before law enforcement had executed their search warrant. She said that Hannah removed a gun belt and some cardboard boxes without any explanation. And you saw in my video clip earlier on Law and Crime that those boxes filled with bullets was really important in this thing. So, I hope you'll spend some time watching this trial, folks. I think it's going to set the stage for a trial against Alec Baldwin, and it might provide some prediction into what's going to happen when he faces a jury. The defense is going to continue to state that Hannah Gutierrez-Reed is to not be blamed. This is the defense. They're going to say she's not to be blamed for Hutchins' death and that she's being smeared and she's unfairly scapegoated by the prosecution. So, watch for the introduction of more evidence that's going to suggest that Gutierrez-Reed unwittingly brought live ammunition onto the set against all of the rules. The prosecution's going to try to show how these live rounds slowly spread their way through the set. And get this, the live bullets even landed in several of the actors' costumes. The prosecution's going to also try to prove that this armorer missed multiple opportunities to ensure safety and that she loaded a live round into the gun that killed Hutchins. Along the way, she failed to check whether the bullets were in the gun and whether they were live or dummies. And this happened more than once, 2 times, when the armorer and the assistant director failed to clear that weapon. Now, the defense will also try to prove that it was somebody else's mistakes that led to the death. And they undoubtedly are going to suggest that the supplier of these dummy rounds actually, mistakenly or on purpose, sent live bullets that ended up in the weapon that killed Hutchins. Just remember the defense comment that they made. They said, quote, "What they've tried to do and what you're seeing in this courtroom today is trying to blame it all on Hannah, a 24-year-old. Why?" And they say because she's an easy target, she's the least powerful person on that set, close quote. Well, I want to know what your thoughts are on this case, and I hope you'll put them down below. Remember that you can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and here on YouTube. And make sure that you're checking out Profiling Evil podcasts in audio form. You can find them on your favorite podcast platform. And I hope you're waiting and watching for our weekly Fundamentalist Fridays exploration of the FLDS Church and imprisoned leader Warren Jeffs. This week, we're going to be exploring the house where Jeffs kept his 87 wives. We're going to go inside for an exclusive tour by his 65th wife, who's now turning the place into a refuge for women and children escaping polygamy. You're not going to want to miss that one. And make sure that you've signed up for our digital newsletter, the BOLO. BOLO stands for Be on the Lookout, and the only way you're going to get it is by signing up at profilingevil.com. And while you're there, I hope you'll consider purchasing my books. I'm signing them for free this month. Hey, we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.